Good day, everybody. Well, isn't this fun and games? Welcome. I am super excited as your host, Paul, to be welcoming you to what is definitely a spooky and perhaps sometimes a little scary event. As you can see, it's called Good Omens and Bad Launches. It's a Halloween tale of missed signals, poor decisions, and perhaps second chances if we're lucky. If we're lucky. And as you'll see in a moment, I'm going to be joined by the wonderful Ian McKinnon, and I'll introduce him in just 1 second. But before I do that, of course, it's time for you to participate immediately. So if you wouldn't mind opening that chat window, which I know you're going to enjoy and love so much during the next hour, I want you to say hello. Please tell us where you're dialing in from. Tell us why. Why you dialed in? What is it about this topic that is interesting to you? And feel free to introduce yourself in whatever way you see fit. In the meantime, you will also see a launch poll question jumping up on your screen. And it's a two-parter. I'd like to just hold that open for a few minutes while I do my introductions. And if you could just answer that, that would be great. There's a question about the types of early signals you think our industry must capture in real time, and which of those signals you believe our companies are currently weakest at capturing. So I'll leave you for a minute to cover those. So, I'm coming to you today from not Transylvania or anywhere more scary than that. It's actually just, home in London. But it is a super exciting and super popular webinar, this one. And I think it's because we instinctively know that even the biggest pharma brands, the best and the brightest, the ones that we think are doing so well, the sharpest science, the deepest pockets, they can still mess up their launch. In fact, maybe even some of the successes could be even bigger successes. We just don't know, really, do we? Perhaps we're leaving money on the table. And in this hopefully no filter Halloween fireside storytime special, we're going to explore what might be possible at launch to ensure that we do indeed know what is possible and what's going on. So I want to introduce Ian. And Ian is, oh, there's me. I'll introduce myself. I think you all know who I am. But this is Ian. And he has recently joined Within3 as a managing director. And previously to that, he was actually global head of commercial consulting at Oracle, where he spent many years, probably on the same side of the fence as you, trying to guide global pharma teams through the uncertainty, the difficulty, the unknown that surrounds every single launch. And I think that, well, we'll hear his story in just a moment, but he's joined Within3, I think, because suddenly there's a way to make that far smarter. There's a way to be able to see between the wood and the trees. So we're going to try and unpick even why the very best and most sophisticated strategies actually fall short. We're going to try and understand how a slightly different approach to evidence and timing and implementation could actually change the ending of our story entirely. And we're going to hopefully have a bit of an honest exchange as well, the truth and the reality of what we could be doing and what we're not doing. So I do, now you've managed to locate the chat window, I do want you to use it. I want you to use it a lot during this. There's really the two of us on stage today, but there's a lot more of you. And I want to make sure this is not just a one-way dialogue. Now, but when you signed up for this session, you may recall that you actually answered a question on the way in. As you can see, it's called, in your experience, which of these dimensions has been the biggest weakness in your company's recent launches? And what were the results? You can see it's a pretty even spread, even before I show you what the answers are. Well, let's have a look. Okay, so top position, cross-functional agility, actually alignment of different departments and perhaps moving beyond the silos that we know and love. HCP adoption with under a quarter, moving beyond the first wave of early adopters. So there's perhaps a little bit of a buffer zone, a difficult zone once we get past that early launch. HCP activation, initial understanding and readiness for the project. So the very beginning of the launch process. Market anticipation now down at 17%, spotting shifts in stakeholder sentiments early enough to act. And then finally, at 15%, it's our competitor counter strategy, anticipating and neutralizing rival moves. So that was the first question. There was another one as well. This one is, which part of your launch planning feels most exposed to the blind spots? So again, pretty even set of results here, much more than I usually get in these polls. Winner, with nearly a third, was the market shaping an early stakeholder sentiment, what people really think. That's interesting, isn't it? I think we'll probably end up talking a little bit about that one. HCP adoption curve, converting those interests into scripts, very similar to moving past the early adopters from the last poll. Competitor counter strategy reacting faster than you do. And finally, cross functional alignment. Interesting, that was first place in the previous poll and last place in this one. So very interesting stuff. I'm going to quickly show you this stat as well. I've got plenty of stats to sprinkle through this webinar, but this one is coming on screen right now. Nearly 60%, this is according to Deloitte, of new product launches miss their expectations, not because the science fails, or certainly not always because the science fails, but because market execution has not kept pace with the speed and complexity of today's data environment. You could almost argue, couldn't you, that if there was as much due care and attention spent to the launch process as there is to the R&D process, we might get better ROI. Perhaps the best drug out there isn't the best science, it's how we treat the science and distribute it. Well, there's a little hypothesis for you. Okay, I'm going to ditch my slides now for a second, and I'm going to end the poll. Thank you to everyone who answered it. Only about half of you have answered my poll. Come on, guys, are you asleep already? I want more poll results in the future polls, but I'm going to end it now anyway and have a look at the results. There we go. Sharing that. Okay. Okay, so what have we got? We've got 20% saying HCP sentiment shifts, 27 the highest, digital and social chatter, 19 for competitor scientific activity, and 20% for payer and HTA reactions. Again, quite an even distribution. Which of these signals do you believe that our companies are currently weakest at capturing? Well, again, it's a fairly even distribution, 24% the highest with digital and social data, and just behind it, HCP sentiment, payer access, and competitor intelligence, all hovering around the 20 to 25% region. That's very, very interesting. Right, I've got so much on my screen, I can barely tell what's going on, but I would love for, at this point, Ian, if you are there, to turn on your camera. Oh, look at that. Look at that, everybody. Beautiful, beautiful. A sight for sore eyes. Ian, what a pleasure to have you here today. And I can already see the chat window is warming up. So I suspect we will get to that in a moment. Let's talk about this. Earlier, I gave you your bio as former Oracle, really on the side of trying to make these launches work. What encouraged you to move? What has sort of changed in the world, if you like, that now makes you feel that your own hours are best spent trying to cure launches as opposed to individual drugs?
Sure. So maybe I'll give a little bit more background. So I had come originally from really a healthcare consulting firm called Kantar Health. And that's to a large degree where I cut my teeth on, what does it mean to be a consultant in life sciences? Like, what are the kinds of decisions, particularly commercialization, but often HUR as well, that are being made, and how can we best support them? What information do they need, and how do we shape that in a way that supports strategic decision making? We then got purchased by Oracle, so now I'm within an organization of world-class technology, and I could see the promise of marrying those two things. But I had a very specific interest in doing it within the life sciences insight generation space. And this is something that Within3 was already doing. And they were making great strides, and they had a roadmap that was clearly going in the right direction. So for me, it really was just an easy move to be able to go there and kind of continue what I had been doing already, which is supporting life sciences, making sure they're making the best decisions. And I focus a lot on like what the effectiveness of it, and doing things in a way that are automated and use technology.
Thank you, Ian. And yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And it's obviously early days, but I'm sure you're already feeling a lot of traction. And of course, so much of that is on technology. So you saw that statistic that I showed you at the beginning. Nearly 60% of product launches miss expectations, not because of the science failing, but because market execution has not necessarily kept pace. What's your view, Ian? What's your hands-on experience of this? Can you speak at all to not only whether you feel this and see this, but also whether or not you think that this is a number that is easily moved?
So maybe it's two parts. Yes, I do think there's truth in these numbers. I don't think they're a misstatement of launches today. And it's not to say that launches aren't successful. Many of them are, obviously, but they could be quite a bit better. And it is often a matter of, does the brand team have the information they need to be able to see signals that might lead to a course correction? If they do have a signal, do they agree that it's a signal in their cross-functional team? Do they even have cross-functional teams that align on signals that lead to action? Can they even get to an action? So there's lots there that needs to all fall into place. Beyond, there's a plan pre-launch that speaks to kind of every dimension of that launch that is to be executed flawlessly. And then the question is, are they doing it? And if it's not being done, how do they modify to be able to essentially reach whatever that commercial potential is for the product?
Mm. Do you think that just playing devil's advocate here for a
Sure.
second, got nothing to do with the fact that it's nearly Halloween, but just playing devil's advocate, do you think that we are sometimes celebrating success a little prematurely or even a little falsely when indeed those headline numbers that may look good could potentially have been so much better? Do you sort of see headroom there for more improvement?
Um, I do. You, I would say celebrate success when you have it, but then always like, how do we push to do more? How do we review, scrutinize to be able to make sure, the patients who we thought would be getting our products, so our kind of defined swim lanes before launch, are they actually the ones getting the product? Are the stakeholders who we believed would use our product, are they actually the ones who are using it? Are we stealing share from the brand we thought we were going to? Or no, it's not going that way. So it's yes, celebrating the good launches that are out there. I mean, this industry is bringing incredible improvements to patients' health. There are such tremendous products out there. But at the same time, you have to always be pressure testing and pushing to make sure, like, are we monitoring for potential issues and determining whether or not we should be adjusting what is just a strategy that is alterable, is adjustable. It's meant to evolve and grow as you get more information, which you're always going to get once you get into market. The environment will be different. Competitors will react in ways you haven't quite predicted, even if you've done all the wargaming in the world. And then you have to be ready and in the mindset to adjust as needed.
Yeah, something I often say is that complacency is pharma's greatest disease. And what you're almost suggesting there, and I realize you're probably kinder than I am, but what you seem to be suggesting there is that we should not rest on our laurels, that
Yes.
just because of early traction does not mean that we should sit back and let it all roll in, because there is undoubtedly much more that we could and should be doing, even if it's not a purely commercial driver, a patient access driver, and a general population impact that we're trying to have.
Yes.
Those will be things that we stay restless around.
Yes.
Another statistic that I found pretty interesting, and this was from pharmaceutical manufacturer. Nearly half of pharmaceutical companies say that data silos threaten the efficiency, and you saw how silos and the lack of cross-functional working was
Yeah.
cited by the audience as the number one issue, which I did not expect that to come as number one. But yeah, nearly half say that the silos threaten efficiency. Now, we've obviously been talking about silos since we were born, possibly even
Yes.
before that. Does the world we're living in today, does the fact that we need to be more data driven in our decision making, does it enable us to improve the siloization of our companies? Does it allow us to remove some boundaries that might have existed before? Oh, look, there's a lovely slide to show it.
That is.
Yeah, do we have that ability now? Can I stop
Uh,
talking about silos, please?
no, well, probably not. So, not an easy to solve problem. Certainly, we'll be talking about this for a while longer, but I do think that certainly with AI being such a crucial element of analytic workflows and data workflows now, it in a way will make data uniformly available. I mean, it is designed essentially to draw from data sources, data lakes as a whole to be able to have integrated answers to questions. So it almost it it removes the issue. It can remove the issue of silos that are functional issues, organizational issues, because it wouldn't make sense for different silos to have their own AI doing their own things on their own data sources. That wouldn't make any sense whatsoever. So I absolutely believe. So I'll say two elements here. One is AI will go in that direction, but then it's up to us on the agency side to create products and frameworks that enable that the friction and the isolation of silos to be mitigated. I mean, that's part of what we're responsible for as well.
Absolutely. Well, our conversation has started to drift towards action and solutions, and in anticipation of it heading in that direction, I'm going to launch another poll question on the audience here, and you can see it's another two-parter, actually with the title of Action, and it's about whether your company is responsive or not. So I'll hold that open for the next 3 or 4 minutes or so, give you a chance to read that. I'm sorry if the last poll got pulled away from you somehow. I apologize. That's why only half of you answered it. I'll try and make sure this one stays on screen. In the meantime, Ian, that Deloitte stat, the 60% stat, was backed up by another couple of stats from Deloitte.
Yes.
47% of failed launches can be traced to a lack of market understanding, 41% to a weak therapeutic differentiation. That's two sides of the same coin, isn't it? I often lament that marketers in our industry, they're so obsessed with right time, right place that we've almost forgotten that kind of competitive differentiation a lot of the time. It
Yes.
feels like it's less important than it used to be.
Yeah.
And as for market understanding, we obviously as an industry spend probably billions, I would say, rather than millions on market research
Yes.
and market understanding and listening to what our customers need and want, and of course what the patient community needs and wants. Again, how can this, why is this number not 4.7%? Why is it 47%? This is, an F grade, right? For our industry.
Yes, it is. Particularly where for any individual product, billions have been invested to get it to the point of even launching often, right? So there's almost this tremendous responsibility that these are dollars spent that weren't spent on some other disease in some other area. So you have to kind of look at it this way as, hey, there's an obligation around this. I think a lot of it is not doing maybe the right work with customers or enough work with customers. Some of it is integrating those data sets to be able to get a triangulated picture of what patients and physicians or treaters need. It is absolutely both pieces. And then being open when the product launches to hear actual clinical feedback from providers and from patients about what need it's actually filling at the point of use and adjusting as needed. So you have to have awareness of what that is, and knowledge of what that is, quick, almost in near real time. You don't have, it's one of those things where if you look at kind of older ways of doing things where it was primary market research based, you find something 6 weeks post launch, you may have to wait 8 more weeks to be able to kind of verify and confirm, what it is. And there's just not that much time. And competitors are certainly not going to allow, they're not going to wait to allow you to figure things out. So you need to have that information very quickly, and you need to have it across multiple data streams to be able to triangulate. And a lot of it is internally making the case that the information is verifiable, confirmable, and reliable, so that they can make actions. Because almost every action is going to require resourcing as well. So they
Yeah.
have to have the evidence to be able to do that.
Okay, Ian, before we move on to the next chapter, I'm just going to read out three or four statements from the audience. I'd love to just hear
Uh,
your reaction to them. So, first one, brand teams need data to be able to course correct. And this is particularly important in the launch phase. Um, and someone else says, once data arrives, this is Mervyn, you always need to course correct. The best teams are planning for this and also managing senior management oversight in advance.
yes.
And then the third one I'm going to read out is from Amy Dorgan. Rather than focusing only on speeding our understanding of how wrong we got it in real life versus the scenario planning, we also need to work on getting it more right during planning by understanding more about the market and the end users than we typically do. So Amy is arguing that despite all of those millions and billions spent, we still don't understand our market well enough. So I won't read any more because that'll just be too much. But Ian, any reaction to what you've just heard?
So, so yes, the first one was like, we need data, we need more data. That's absolutely true.
But
However,
specifically to brand teams, so not
speci-
just HQ and
correct,
presumably in country as well, is I think what
correct.
the person is trying to emphasize. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely true. And I'm sure the person who wrote that realizes data is like one step in the process. You then have to know how to analyze it and surface the insights, establish the insights. And it's kind of that process of, you have the what, you want to know the why. Once you have the why, it's the so what does it matter? How important is it? And then it's the now what, like what do we do? So it's the data is kind of that foundational well that you need to be able to draw from. But that again is just kind of the beginning of that insights ladder that you are going up. And the comment about yes, brands need to have thought through scenario planning or wargaming, it's often called, to make sure that they've thought through all of these contingencies. But even with the best planning, you're not going to hit every single one. So you need to be able to be agile in the moment and have the data to be able to understand what's happening to adjust. And the comment about it, the post launch, adjustments, very important. But to get everything right initially, pre-launch, and have all of your information about the market that you need, and have done that wargaming, absolutely critical as well.
Mm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you can't wait till you get on the field to be in condition. You have to have done all that work up front.
Yeah, well, trust me, if you saw me, if I can use your analogy, if you saw me on a sports field, I think you'd know whether I'd done my preparation or not. Simon Fittol says, good, fast data are there if you look for it. It just requires a different view of where data comes from. Now, we weren't specifically going to be talking about data sources today, Ian, but I do wonder whether you have just any opinion on whether this idea of fast and even real-time data actually requires a different attitude and different sources, or it's more
Um,
about treatment of it.
so, data often has some kind of qualification around it in terms of reliability or power associated with it, right? So that's not untrue. I might look at information that comes in the US, for example, from claims in a very different way than how a physician talks about usage in a qualitative setting, right? So yes, absolutely true. You are kind of considering the source as you evaluate the reliability of that information. But in most cases, data is a good thing to have. It's better to have and decide not to use than to be lacking entirely and just kind of guessing about what should be done, or not having it from that 360 view of all of your stakeholders, patients, providers, accounts, payers, whatever it might be, to make sure that you're actually understanding the universe you're going to launch into well before you do that.
Hmm. Okay, well, thank you, Ian. And I think it's time to share the results of that poll. So hopefully you can see on your screens right now. The first one, what usually delays your ability to act? Um, we added this question late in the day, and I was kind of hoping no one would click on it, but it turns out it's the winner. We tend to focus on insights that validate our existing strategy rather than those that challenge it, 20%. Sorry, I don't know what to say there. It's we love the vanity metrics. We love to feel like we're doing the right job. So that was the winner to that question. And then part two, how quickly do you believe your organization currently pivots when signals emerge? Well, unsurprisingly, only 2% of people said days.
Mm.
So it's a bit of a normal distribution. Within a
Yep.
quarter, realistically, the fastest, that's got 38% of the view.
Yep.
Longer than a quarter, about a quarter of the view.
Yep.
4%, never. Yeah, it's that one's less surprising, I think. I think that one's less
Yeah.
surprising.
Yeah.
But
That first one
tend to
doesn't
focus on
bother
it.
me, actually.
Really?
Yeah. So,
Why? I'm interested. That bothers me a lot.
yeah, it bothers you a lot.
Hmm.
So, I think it would be, I think I would have been surprised that it was not higher. And I think that's what that is telling us is we will fall into the trap of looking for things that are confirmatory or that don't rock the boat, and that we as kind of participants in the launch of a product, wherever you sit, however you support, part of our purpose is to be scrutinizing everything. It does require senior leadership to have the same mindset to be able to do that. But it's like, okay, we're recognizing that this is an issue. So when I'm participating in these activities, I have to recognize that this is an issue, and I need to figure out a way politically to call this out, knowing that this is a trap. And in almost no cases will that lead to a better launch if that's your kind of your disposition in terms of the data you're looking at.
Yeah, so much of what you're saying, Ian, is the response to insight and what should be a pivot point rather than the insight itself. And
Mhm.
as a general broad answer, you're a CEO for the day of a pharma company. You can wave a magic wand. What is the single action that you can
Oh
take to
boy.
try and make the company more actionable, more flexible, more spirited when the information comes in? You've said we, of course, need to be agile. I've heard you say that probably two or three times
Sure.
now. But
Sure.
what is the action that you can take? We, of course, could talk about agility for, 3 hours at least. But, when
Yeah.
people don't have the mandate to change the whole organization, what is the specific biggest thing that you think you
All
can?
right. So this is like one of those, like, however I answer it, I'm not going to get it right kind of question. But
No, no, which
what
is
I'll
why
say,
I'm got the devil horns on and,
yeah, no, which I get. So it's interesting as you were saying that. Like I was thinking, I think the most important thing that the organization well, I shouldn't say it that way. A key thing that the organization should focus on is what's the underlying need of the patient. What is the true benefit that we are seeking to provide to that patient? And I had an economics professor once who said to me, and we were talking about, I don't even know what it was, but it's always stuck with me. He said that people don't buy light bulbs, people buy light. So you got to focus on the thing that they need and the thing that they value. And it might not be served by a light bulb, it might be served by some other technological advance or some other source. So focus on the actual thing that's valued.
Hmm.
So I would say that has to be a very strong guiding principle with an organization.
Yeah, that's very similar to the jobs to be done theory, as Clay Christensen often espouse or used to espouse, and I'm sure many will be familiar with that. But it's so easy to forget, isn't it? So easy to forget. Um, I want to just move on to another thing quickly. By the way, we are going to show a couple of things in a moment in this webinar, and so do stick around for that. But just before we get to that, let's just talk about a bit of a scenario, if that's okay, Ian.
Sure.
It's 6 months post-launch. You are down versus your plan
Mm,
projections. Not hugely, let's say 7%. Um, what were the weak signals that you should have acted on? Of course, this is all hypothetical. I realize it can be different.
mm,
And how would this concept that you're bringing to our world within three are very much introducing launch intelligence?
yes.
How would that literally have allowed this to be surfaced early and the course to be changed?
Yeah. So I'll move away from conceptually like what we're trying to do with multiple data streams and integrating them, analyzing them, and supporting kind of underlying strategic needs. But and then move to maybe the more concrete. So every brand has got plans for each facet of the launch, and they have an understanding or expectation around each of those. Those should be translated into metrics that are tracked post launch. It could be any number of things. Like it all tends to originate around product share. So, how well is it performing against its market basket of products? But it's so much deeper than that. Even just basic things like line of therapy, source of business, source of erosion, the patients who are using the product, are they the ones that were expected to use the product? Or is there some other characteristic of those patients that might be a learning, might be a new opportunity that one wasn't aware of? Is it getting the payer status expectations? Is payer coverage happening? There's expectations around how long a patient should be staying on a product. Are those being met in terms of adherence and compliance? So kind of think about the metrics of all of that information that can be discoverable at very kind of small granular kind of elements, geographically account and so forth. And so you've got that information. You've got information around what's coming in from social that can be analyzed as well. You've got the ability to do discussions, qualitative, quantitative, as well to gain additional information. So that's how I think about, are we post launch at least? Are we measuring the things that we know from all of that pre-launch work, which will be critical to the success of the product? And are they meeting expectations that are leading to success? And maybe they're not, but maybe some other facet has come up that wasn't even kind of surfaced earlier. And it could be some other opportunity area that one wasn't aware of. That's
Mm.
kind of the way the launch intelligence, tactically, let's say, is set up or designed to work.
Right. So there's a lot of solving the you didn't know what you didn't know question from the sounds of things. Um, and you have talked to me multiple times, as I already said, about flexibility, agility, responsiveness, and
Yeah.
indeed pre-preparing for that response. And all of that suggests in my head that launch could happen sooner because you don't have to plan to the nth degree, like a rocket launch, and then everything has to be meticulously perfect. You can plan earlier and get things out earlier, and then adjust along the way. And I don't know if that's what you're saying, if I'm putting words in your mouth, but get to my actual question here eventually.
Yeah.
I have a friend who works for Novartis. He is head of launch intelligence there. Oh, sorry, head of launch excellence there,
Okay.
and he uses the analogy of Tinder. In Tinder, you swipe left or swipe right, and if you are swiping left, you will never see that person again. In other words, you have one chance to impress. It's perhaps why Tinder tends to be a little superficial. But the point is that there is a school of belief that you don't
Mm.
have the ability to adjust, to pivot, to get a second chance, as we said at the beginning of this event. What is your opinion on that? And is it Tinder, or is it something a bit more flexible? And do we indeed get that second chance?
Yeah. So I'll maybe ask a question about your first part, which is um, my experience is that brands launch as soon as they can from a regulatory perspective. Like they're not holding back launch based on other kinds of factors. So kind of like whether they're ready or not, if they don't launch, they're leaving kind of money on the table for the days they're waiting out. So at least kind of on average, right? But to your point more is that, okay, if you know there has to be some level of adjustment or modulation post-launch, does it leave more openness ahead of time because you know there'll be some adjustment needed later? And I would say that's probably true, actually. And when you frame your market understanding and your plans, that should be part of what you're thinking about, because that's what you're going to want to do afterwards. Your second question about are you one and done kind of a thing is what I'm hearing. That's a very difficult question. I would say traditionally, because of the fact that the information comes to us slowly, or the ability to kind of triangulate and confirm information is slow, and the ability to react is slow, the number of weeks that go by before an action might be taken often puts a correction or a full correction kind of off the table at that point. So I would say from a traditional framework, it is often you get one launch, it's very hard to reset, once a certain number of weeks or months has gone by. But I would argue that the more the information you have is in real time, as real as possible, and the more you've thought through contingencies about what might happen and the ability for a team to take action, the more likely you have success to fix a trajectory that's not what it should be. So I'll frame it in that way. Yeah,
Okay.
our goal is to get to a place where the window of being able to adjust is now not only there, but is wider than it has been historically because of this additional information.
Well, Ian, all I'm saying is that it's great that our future customer dating life doesn't have to rely only on a Tinder-like interface, therefore. So thank you for giving us that opportunity. You'll see I've launched another poll, a very simple one, this one, on your impression of the notion of launch intelligence and indeed your reaction to it from what you've heard already and just what comes to mind. But Ian, time is a marching. We're having fun, obviously. Why don't you take this opportunity to share your screen and
Yes,
show us a bit of a scenario-ish type situation
I
that
will do
might
that.
inspire us a little.
Okay, let me make
I'll
sure I
hold
set
this
this up.
open, this poll question open for just one more minute, by the way, so answer it when you can.
Okay, let me just. All right. Hopefully this is full screen, Paul.
Yep.
Can you see? All right.
Perfect.
So Paul set this up as a example of the work that we're doing today with our launch intelligence platform. And what I'm going to walk through is it's a case study. It's been scrubbed, make sure we protect the underlying organization, but it conceptually outlines what we were able to do with this launch intelligence platform to be able to give guidance to the client of not only an opportunity and also a pretty strong patient need, but what that insight would mean in terms of possible interventions by the brand in the market space to be able to overcome or to capitalize, let's say, on the opportunity. So anyhow, so to kind of set the scene, we have a life sciences client who is focused on understanding more about diagnosis and treatment within microscopic colitis. And you may hear me say this as MC later. And the first kind of piece of the work that they did was a pretty straightforward virtual advisory board. And then second, we did some monitoring of a congress related to the gastro area. So I'm going to do a little bit of demonstration of, okay, this is the platform and this is what we offer to clients today. But you will find me drift more into like, what's the insight we're trying to get? What are we trying to learn? That tends to be more my happy place anyhow, beyond just the functionality. So this is within the actual virtual discussion. part of the platform. This is what the moderator happens to see from this view. A lot of information, but the key piece is there are several questions that are going to be discussed in the advisory board, and this is asynchronous. So it's posted. The advisor, the care wells will make comments. They'll comment on each other. The moderator will probe, and this kind of goes on for a certain number of days. But in this particular case, the question was, in many ways, a monitoring or surveillance type of question. It is, hey, tell us about some of the trends you're currently seeing in the diagnosis and treatment of microscopic colitis. Kind of just a general type of question to do that constant surveillance, again, that word of like what's happening in the marketplace. So within the platform, we have our participants. These are our KOL gastros providing us information about what's happening. And we have kind of drill downs in each of these so the client can see who they are, contact information, whatever background information would be necessary. And so I'm kind of just demonstrating kind of what's in the platform itself. You can kind of see the dialogue pieces and who made certain statements about things. And there's this kind of note, kind of one-off, that this particular doctor is seeing significant diagnostic delays in the treatment of MC when there are stress-related factors. So this is the first time like something comes up where, hey, maybe there's an issue going on here with diagnosis, which means we've got issues with patients' quality of life because the postponement of treatment would be a play here. So as the discussion continues in this kind of virtual setting, we have the moderator kind of coming in this case, he's asking about, biopsies and why are biopsies delayed? So the screening for this is a biopsy that's being done. So this particular physician says the delay can take years in some cases. So now we've got a diagnostic kind of problem, and we've got a duration related to it, right? So it's like, okay, this is a big deal, and it's a very treatable condition, which we would have known. So okay, so like what's going on here? This is an issue now. We need to learn more about it. Okay, so that ad board is over. Let's say we take our learnings. We're focusing on this one particular. We were just going into a Congress as well. So now in the back of our heads, we're like, all right, let's see if this particular issue comes up during the Congress. We want to be able to confirm it. We'd love to be able to see how often it's coming up. Is this a topic that comes up infrequently, or is it no? There's quite a bit of discussion going on about this particular topic. So this is the platform section for kind of the collation of all of the information from the Congress. And we use AI to be able to summarize our key insight topics. So that's what you're seeing here. So one of them was patient journey. So we're taking in kind of the streams of information from the Congress, and we're analyzing it, and we're providing an AI summary. So this is essentially saying that there has been kind of repeated comments, reports that patients with comorbidities are not getting colonoscopic biopsies. So they're not being diagnosed. So now we've got kind of more critical mass around this kind of thing that surfaced that would be both a problem for patients and an opportunity. So one of the things we always want to do with AI is like, what's the source? Is the source any good? What is the specific origin, the person, are they credible, and so forth. So we do break out for each of these AI aggregated summaries where it came from. So now we have specific information that when there is comorbid anxiety, so now we have identified what is that comorbid condition. It seems to be anxiety at least. There's no biopsies for at least a year, and that this is an issue in terms of diagnosis. Okay, so we've got two big pieces of information, an ad board and a Congress. We know much more about this now. We know that there's delay in treatment. Delay can be 1 to 5 years. We know it's related to anxiety, but it might be related to other types of things. So I had a conversation with a client. Now we are pulling in additional information into the platform to be able to essentially just drill down further. And in this case, it was field notes. It was additional social listening data. In the US, it was claims data. And we want to be able to get down further. And again, you kind of see these same key insight topics with their AI summaries to be able to work through what is just a tremendous amount of data very, very quickly to be able to get to like what is going on here. So again, another confirmation, anxiety and depression now 1 to 5 year delay in diagnosis is kind of being recognized by all of these different data streams. Okay, again, we're going to check that source data. We're just going to make sure that what's being pulled in, kind of exactly reflects what is in those sources. So we have a particular source here, has the terminology or the information around 1 to 5 years, delaying diagnosis. People are not being treated with MC because of that. So let's say in this case, we'd like to be like, okay, who is this Dr. Colin Bell? We profile all of these physicians. So we know internal medicine doctor, they're at Mount Sinai. We know their scientific ranking or collaboration ranking based on their authorship of publications. So we know how often they collaborate and how often this doctor's collaborators also collaborate. So what's that expanded network effect of the work that they're doing? We also know a lot of information about their clinical practice. How many patients do they see? How many claims have they filed? Are they connected through referrals with other physicians? So it's giving us a really kind of solid picture of who this is. And if we want to have them as a KOL, we have a lot of information about them. And you can see in the platform on the left, there's drill downs for each of these. Maybe I'll stop, Paul, in case you have a question. I don't want to monologue through the whole thing.
No, it's all good actually. I think it was
right.
super interesting. I didn't expect you to pause there just to look at that. You're getting to some juicy numbers and everything.
I am.
Well, let me
But I will
just
go ahead if you'd like.
well, just before you do that, I will ask one question then, Ian,
Sure.
which is this all makes a lot of sense. I don't think anyone could really argue that one shouldn't follow. What's the inertia? What's the you've obviously got almost every major pharma company working within three in not necessarily using this product, but in some capacity. What is the inertia or barrier that people are facing towards doing this, and does it require any organizational redesign, rethink in order to take advantage and indeed have all of those movements that you said before?
So there really isn't like organizational barriers. It is awareness, making sure that different brand teams are aware. I think we're in the top 20 life sciences companies, but not in every brand in those companies, right? So part of it is awareness, and luckily there's been a lot of good word of mouth within organizations for this. In some cases, some life sciences organizations have pretty strict rules about the use of AI. So that can be a bit of a barrier because not essentially, but a lot of the power of this is the AI technology that's built into it. But other than that, we're not seeing like tremendous barriers. It both adds to what's being done, and in some cases might replace some of the work that's being done. So yes. All right, so I'll finish the last kind of bit of this. So,
just a quick second.
No.
I'm just going to share the results of the
yes,
poll
go ahead.
question. No, it's all right. Don't worry. I think that you'll be quite pleased by the results. 38% of people saying integrating multiple data sources is what they see as the definition of launch intelligence, and not very many people think it's jargon. So that's good to see. I will get another question going in the moment. The
Sure.
final question, really, Ian. Back to you.
Sure. All right. So the end deliverable of I'll call it like an insights pipeline like this is a strategic report that we wish to provide. We pull everything together, and we want to be able to communicate the insight often in a way that's quantified so that people can understand, like, okay, how big is this? How important is this? So for this particular study, we were able to draw on all of the different pieces of data to be able to put a story together, a strategic report together. So essentially what we found was, again, this is a case study. So it's designed to be able to display, not the actual facts. 80% of patients with microscopic colitis did suffer from anxiety or depression. So this is a big chunk of that population has those comorbid conditions. It's a little bit blinded here on the side here, but my top right is indicating that if you don't have psychological comorbidities, your test rate is above 80% in terms of a biopsy, which would determine whether or not you have MC. But if you do have psychological comorbidities, it's about 54%. So there's a pretty big difference between whether or not you have these comorbid conditions or not. And part of the reason is that patient is now often being treated by a mental health care professional, and they're not thinking about GI issues as local GI issues. They're thinking about anxiety and depression, which is, of course, their focus. So that patient is often misdiagnosed about 2/3 of the time with IBS. That they tend to get stuck there, unfortunately. And because of that, here on the left bottom, a patient who does not have comorbid anxiety depression, they still have a long period of time before they're diagnosed, about 1.4 years, but it's nearly twice that if they do have comorbid anxiety and depression. So there's a real kind of issue here with treatment and the models that are being used, and certainly that connection between the different treaters, including, of course, mental health care professionals and gastros, and maybe even the kind of the primary care physician to make sure that the right care is being given to this patient. So what did we discover? So now we want to be like, okay, we've got the why and the what, and like, okay, well, so what? So a pretty large percent of patients could be treated, and this is a very treatable disease, about 7%, if there was this connection where mental health care professionals were referring, or there was a mechanism for them to do this biopsy test. And that represents about 35,000 patients. So it's a big number. And then we try to go out a little bit on a limb. And I know sometimes we're out in this space of, hey, this is the client's space. This is not our space. You really shouldn't be telling us about the programs we should be doing. But we do want to try to make some type of a hey, like these are the actions that would have impact. So we want to have this discussion, and hopefully at this point we have a good relationship with the client, and this is kind of a working session, and we're kind of talking about what we're seeing and what we're thinking. And often in the ad boards, they're discussing some of these things anyhow, so we're kind of pulling that information through. But just 4 off the top of our kind of thought here for this particular study was, one is you have an integrated care model that focuses on gastros and PCPs. Mental health professionals are not part of that. They need to be brought into this care model because there's a big gap here. The other one is you have educational material so that PCPs know to refer to gastros, but mental health professionals, they don't know how to recognize this. They don't know when to refer out. And baked into that is this notion of mental health professionals, they don't even know, they're not thinking about biopsying. It's not their kind of wheelhouse. It's not their go-to. So that has to be part of the education to make sure these patients are being treated. And then, mental health professionals, they're going to need tools and other support to affirm this and to make sure this actually happens. And then I have one more quick section here. So as part of this platform, and we use it as analysts to be able to draw those strategic recommendations, is a ask anything functionality. Like it's literally, you can type in whatever you want to, and you will get a response to your question based on the data that's in there. And we do have a couple of like seeded questions, because we did find that when we talked to clients about it, sometimes they didn't know quite where to start. So it did help to kind of like ask some things. And once you ask something, you get an answer, it just like leads to more questions about the data. So this is a AI-based engine that is sitting on top of the data lake that is interrogating the data for you based on your questions. So as an example, might ask something like, okay, you've told me this information. Now I want to know which mental health care providers I should be reaching out to. So generate a list of these psychiatric HCPs who would benefit the most from targeted education about MC. We go ahead and do that. Drawing from that information, pull through a list of physicians, and this list, if you click on it, would go even deeper, providing quite a bit of background information on all of them, so you know like where they practice, the number of patients they treat, do they publish, kind of their network rank, and lots of other information, which draws directly from the profiles that we've created. So it's like, okay, well, that's interesting. Let me ask my next question. So my next question in this case would be like, all right, I know the issue. I know I need to get some education out there. I know who to reach out to, but what's the starting point in terms of maybe misconceptions or misunderstandings that mental health care professionals have, and put it in contrast to gastroenterologists, because I know those now. And in doing so, you can go ahead and it pulls together the information that we have from the congresses, from advisory boards, from social, and puts together essentially kind of 2 sets of information with references about, hey, gastroenterologists often misclassify symptoms in colonoscopies based on fetal calprotein being normal. Okay, understood that. We knew that. We know gastros. But psychiatrists, sometimes they attribute the symptoms to anxiety or adverse events of antidepressants or so forth. So that's their starting mindset. So you can see, like, you've got this ability to kind of not only drill down to learn answers, but drill down on the fly. Like, you could be in a meeting and somebody says something, you're like, wait a minute, I don't think that's true based on the data I have. You can just query and see, like, wait a minute, where did you get that fact from? Because what I'm seeing is a little bit different from that. And you can have that discussion about the information. Or maybe there's a question that comes up during some other setting. You have the ability to kind of query this database and get those fast answers and get those references. So let me stop here.
Thank you, Ian. Thank you. And I really appreciate such a comprehensive outlook. We, believe it or not, are pretty much at
Oh my
time.
goodness, we are at time.
So I think the one key thing here, if obviously there's a lot of richness here, there's a lot of depth. I think that the devil in me would perhaps highlight that whether you have this kind of launch intelligence or not, perhaps the concern you should really have is that one of your competitors might. And so if you haven't explored the full potential of it, and there is what I was really amazed with in that, Ian, was just the nuance that you could bring. This is not just, simple commercials here. This is, determining the correct diagnosis of a patient and all of the real sort of hang up, the hidden things that you don't necessarily appreciate when you launch
Yes.
first, and can really see and discover. So to have those, I think, at your fingertips is genuinely powerful. So obviously, big thanks to you and your company for making that an absolute reality. So as a final poll on your screen right now, but I am super aware that we are at time. And what I obviously want to say is a massive, massive thank you to Ian for being willing to take this time with us and take a proper deep dive into the thing that we invest the most in, that is our launch, and the thing that we probably hope the most in, not just us in our companies, but also the patient population as well, caring so much about that. So, guys, I really, really hope that it's been educational, informing, and even inspiring. If you've got any more suggestions for what you want to do on this topic or where you want to go next, please do write them down in the chat window. I'll hold this window open for a couple more minutes. But for now, we're already at a minute past. I don't want you to be late for your next meeting. Ian, what an absolute pleasure, if I may say so, even in my devilish nature. Your angelic better mind is definitely ruling the roost here. And I thank you so much for it. It's been an absolute pleasure
And
to see
thank you, Paul. It was wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Until next time.
Okay.
Thank you,
Okay.
everybody. And do check out the next event. There's a QR code on your screen. And of course, a beautiful image of the two of us, which may or may have some AI in it. I'll let you judge that one. All right. Thank you so much, everybody. We'll catch you next.